All right, guys, welcome in. It is time to talk some college hoops, the college basketball tip-off show here, powered by WagerTalk.com, as we welcome in two of the college basketball gurus here at the site. Double R1L, Steve Merrill in his house, fresh off his coaching debut at William and Mary. What a nice win, I think, there, Merrill, last time we talked. And, of course, Trig back in the saddle again. Adam Trigger. Guys, if you have a question on a loaded slate here on this Friday in college hoops, drop them in the chat room. If you're joining us, don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button, as we're gonna dive right in here, guys. Couple of great games on tap here tonight, and maybe no more interesting than what we're gonna see with Alabama taking on Purdue. Alabama currently the number 2 team in the country. Boy, oh boy, they love to shoot the three. The problem is, if they don't make the three, what the hell do we do with them then? And then, Merrill, the other big question is life after Zach Edey. Is Purdue any good? I don't know what it is without Zach Edey. So how do you approach this one tonight?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, Alabama with Brian Leonard on Tuesday. This is a team that a lot of people think is Final Four caliber again, but I said I got to see more defensively from them. You look at last year, they were outside of the top 100 in defensive efficiency, which is nowhere close to most of those teams that are in contention every year. So I still think they play fast. Like you said, they live and die by the three. And early in the season, I think that can catch teams off guard, especially a team like Purdue, which did lose, a really key piece to their legacy for the last 4 years with their big man, Edey. The Purdue first half play was money in the bank the last couple of seasons. So I don't know if that'll work as well now. My personal feeling is it probably won't. How much of that is Matt Painter, we'll see. But yeah, Purdue first half was a great play for several years versus full game. So once again, if you like Purdue, I'd go first half, but I'd probably lean Alabama here. And I think the full game would be the safer option, especially if they can wear Purdue down in the second half.
What do you think there, Trig? Are you buying Bama? Is Purdue any good? Or should we be looking at an over automatically? What are we thinking?
Well, first, Purdue is definitely good, and I think you kind of nailed the handicap here, Joe, and you're open. Purdue, through 3 games, is hitting threes 43.7%. That is 16th nationally. They're still a very good three-point shooting team, and even though Zach Edey's not there, that's still what they wanted to do when Edey was there. That's what they wanted to do when Edey was there, was shoot the three, play off of Edey and shoot the three. The problem is Edey really added another dimension that they no longer have. But that is their path to victory here, just bombs away from three. And Alabama will give the three up. So I don't think this is as simple as just, backing Alabama and laying points. My numbers actually make Purdue a very slight favorite. And I have a feeling, I have a feeling it's because I downgraded Alabama a little bit where I had them coming into the season. Because they're down a couple of guys, with injuries. I know Houston Millett is out for the season, I believe. He was the kid that transferred over from Pepperdine. And Chris Youngblood is still battling an ankle injury. I don't think we see him back just yet. So that, but the problem is, well, it's not a problem. It's a good problem if you're Alabama. There's like 7 guys that rate out better than those guys on the roster. Like, I don't even know where Millett would have fit into the rotation. Youngblood was probably a starter. But the point is, Alabama's, not hurting for talent, and there's other guys to fill those roles. Now, Alabama off the dribble is going to probably destroy Purdue. Like, Mark Sears is going to get to the rim at will here. Purdue had a hard time keeping Yale out of the paint the other night. So what are they going to do to Alabama? Kind of makes me lean toward the over a little bit, because I go back to the other side and I say, okay, the only real path to victory here is Purdue going bombs away from three. Now, the good news is for Purdue that they can do that, right? Like they've proven their ability to do that. They've already hit threes at a top 20 rate this year, and they've got Mackey Arena on their side. It's an early game. We don't have many of these games in November where you're going to get like the full atmosphere, and Purdue should have the full home court edge tonight at home. So I wouldn't lay like the 3 or whatever it is with Alabama right now, but I don't like Purdue enough to take the 3. So I think very slight lean to Purdue based on the number at the current number. more of a lean toward the over. I think you might see a whole bunch of points in this one.
It's interesting, too, Merrill. What do you do with a team like Alabama, who they're shooting 30% from three on the season, but they're also attempting on nearly 50% of their offensive possessions? They're chucking up threes. So if they're hitting them, great. If they're not hitting them, how the hell do you trust a team and lay any points with them at this point in the season?
It's exactly why I don't use a lot of these games. We'll talk more about it when you ask me about William & Mary against Winthrop probably tonight. They shot at school record 46 three-point attempts the other night against Norfolk State, and they hit 16 of them. You look pretty good when that happens. But, yeah, this is like we talked about with the Boston Celtics and the NBA. You get some random variance. I think where you use it, Joe, though, is maybe big picture after 3 or 5 games where a team is vastly outperformed or underperformed from three. Then you step in and you take some line value with or against them. But on any given night, you're at the mercy of the three-point shot, and you're going to have some real random results. I do think Purdue probably defends the three pretty well. Painter's a veteran coach, and at home, it does concern you a little bit when they're not a true home team. I think these teams, by the way, like William & Mary the other night, shoot a lot better on their true home court. So I would expect Bama, when they're playing some conference home games later in the season, to probably have some really high-scoring shooting nights, and that's when we'll see them hit 80, 90, 100 points like they can do. But, yeah, short term, there's a lot of random variance in these games. This is why they often stay off my card.
So
Joe, I want to throw I want to throw one more thing in there, because you asked, what is Alabama going to do if the threes aren't falling? That's not going to stop them from scoring in this game, because, as we know, and I can't get through a show without bringing up Buffalo. I'll take that L in a little bit later in the show, because that was ugly last night. But there was a time when Buffalo basketball was not ugly, and it was when Nate Oates was coaching here, and he's been coaching the same way since the Buffalo days. He coaches the same way. It's either a three or it's get to the rim. He cuts the mid-range out. So in this matchup, Alabama's going to get to the rim, no problem. That's my fear for Purdue, and that's why I want kind of no part of the Purdue side. Alabama's going to have no issues getting to the rim in this one. It's probably going to create kick-out opportunities for threes. So I don't think the threes not falling means Alabama's not going to score here, and that's kind of why I like the over.
Kind of liking the over here. Kind of hard to argue with that one, guys. Don't forget, hit that like button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Become part of the WagerTalk TV family. If you're joining us live here today, don't forget, drop a game or two that you want to talk about here. We'll answer any questions you have. It's a great college basketball slate here tonight, including Ohio State taking on Texas A&M, and it's an interesting game, Merrill, from the standpoint of Ohio State. I think opened up the season, right? No problem beating Texas. I thought that was pretty impressive. Then I think they absolutely destroyed one of Trigg's favorite teams there, Youngstown State. And now here they are taking on A&M, who that was not good against UCF as they blew a 5-point lead with about 6 minutes left to play. But, boy, they're getting, 5.5 now at this point, Ohio State? Ohio State and this kid Thornton look like the real deal this year, only Chris Holtman's not there anymore, interestingly enough. Do you like the points in this one, or would you only lay it with A&M?
It's fun to click on the opening box at WagerTalk's live odds screens because, obviously like a book like Bet Online puts up a very early number with low limits. It was 2.5. We saw South Point, which is a more public book. They don't take as much sharp money. Came in late. They opened 6.5. And then basically the consensus opener on this was 4.5. Now it stands 5.5. So it's really been all over the place in this game. We've seen a little bit of money coming in the over from 147 up to 148. Two teams early in the season, top 25, like you said, kind of holding on Texas A&M with that loss. We'll see how the rankings come out next week. But once again, Ohio State shot fantastic this season from three. We talk about three-point shooting again, 50% on average so far, 14 for 28 after 2 games. It's hard to imagine that's going to continue tonight. A&M's actually shot pretty well as well, also from the field and from three. Both these teams can light it up here, and would not talk anybody off that over here. And then once again, we saw the line go from 147 to 148, and I think I probably agree with that move.
You are not arguing with that move. Trig, how about you in this one? Ohio State, they've looked apart. I don't know if Youngstown State's good this year or not. I'm sure you will, but are you impressed with what you've seen from Ohio State, and should they be getting points here, at least 2 buckets at this point?
Yeah, I'll talk about the line move. Steve mentioned where it opened and then like kind of where it settled in, because that's kind of what's catching my eye here. So I read on Twitter via a couple of Ohio State people, and I don't know anything. I can't confirm this, but that line being where it is suggests to me that Aaron Bradshaw is not going to play tonight. And
Ooh.
I kind of like that. That was shocking to me. So Aaron Bradshaw, he did play the opener. He didn't really look like himself against Texas. He looked much more like himself against Youngstown State, but he still only played about 20 minutes in both of those games. And in one of my Discords, someone said that he may not play. And I said, okay, that's, I kind of looked at my number here. This is what I would make the number if he's out. Okay, so that's what I would keep the eye on. If he is in, or, and this might be as much as like waiting right until before tip-off, as long as Bradshaw is going to play, I see some value here on Ohio State. It goes to, I guess, me maybe not being as high as the market was on Texas A&M coming into the season. So I'll go back to that opening season loss. That was it wasn't a bad loss, but like UCF lost Sellers for right before that game. So that was UCF without their best player. So I guess kind of a little bit of a surprising loss, but it's also worth noting that Zurich Phelps did not play in that game for Texas A&M, and he's probably been their best player for the next two games now. East Texas A&M, and I think Lamar are maybe the teams that they've beat. So I don't know how much stock you put into that. My gut tells me that this number is too big. Now, if Bradshaw were to be ruled out, then I would agree with it. Then I think 6.5 makes sense. If he's in and Ohio State doesn't have any key injuries, outside of, I guess we'll just say Bradshaw, outside of the guys that we know are already out, like the guys that are out for the season, then I would have to look at the Buckeyes plus the points. I think that number's a little bit too big.
Well, yeah, I mean, they certainly could use Bradshaw because they don't rebound the ball great, and he's one of their only hopes on that team, and Stewart, right?
Yeah, and it's worth noting that I don't think he's played like full minutes yet this season. I think he played like 20 minutes in the first two games. So, but that was very interesting to me. That's something I'll be keeping my eye on as we get closer to tip-off in this game.
48%, Merrill, like we talked about these first couple of games. The Buckeyes have been hitting 48% from three in two games. They got this kid, Mobley Jr., this freshman that can absolutely shoot lights out. And what I didn't realize, and Dre, I don't know if you know that Michi, wasn't he the kid from South Carolina? He transferred now to Ohio State. So they've got themselves some shooters here. It'll be interesting on the road. This is a tough place to play, though, in College Station. How much credit, Merrill, do you give home court at this point, at this time of year?
Yeah, you're right, Joe. It's 48. I actually was looking at the one road game. They were 14 for 28, right. So it's 50% on the road, 48 overall. I'll tell you something I want to point out, though, that jumps out to me. And once again, 3 games in, versus 2 games in, very small sample sizes. But Texas A&M so far in their first 3 games this season have shot 61% from the free throw line. Ohio State has shot 78%. So once again, when you're in this 5.5 point spread range with a favorite like A&M, that 61%, if that's the real number for the season, would definitely be a concern. And another reason Ohio State might be able to sneak in as an underdog.
Yeah, and you want to talk about shooting for a second, Joe. You want to talk about shooting for a second. Like, I think I love Quest Glover. Like, he hasn't really gotten a ton of shots off yet. Like, he really didn't play much against Texas. He was featured a little bit more against Youngstown State. He came from Samford. He was a furnace 2 years ago at Samford and then ended up in Kansas State and never got on the floor because he hurt himself earlier in the season. Never actually played a minute for the Wildcats last year in Jerome Tang, and now he's at Ohio State. So 18 minutes against Youngstown State, only scored 5 points, but I think he's capable of more. He's someone I would think would be a positive add for Ohio State this year.
All right, good stuff, guys. Don't forget, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, become part of the WagerTalk TV family, as we've got a great slate of college basketball games here tonight. We're going to have a couple of best bets coming your way, and of course, we'll take your questions. Any games that you guys want to talk about, go ahead, drop them in the chats here. And I want to send a shout out to, I believe it was Kevin Prescott over in TikTok, in fact, and welcome in to those of you in TikTok joining us. Don't forget to hit that follow button. But he brings up a good question here, and I don't know if either one of you guys have seen, but he wants to know if Georgetown can make a big a comeback this year, and will they be competitive in the Big East? And that is a good question, and we've got a couple of really good Big East games coming up here tonight. But as far as the Big East goes, Trig, let me ask you here. There's obviously clear favorites, but Villanova is not one of them. And Villanova taking on Virginia tonight might just be the perfect cure for insomnia in this one. Tell me about that game, and tell me about whether or not you think Georgetown can improve this year.
I mean, so I guess my only take on Georgetown improving is they should improve just results wise, because I think there's more winnable games in Big East play this year than there was for them last year. Now, whether they have improved significantly as a team, that I'm not really sure. I don't have a strong take on that. As far as, and I think they've got, who do they have tomorrow? I think it's Notre Dame. They have
Notre
coming
Dame,
up tomorrow, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
I mean, that Notre Dame team struggled with Buffalo on Monday.
Yep.
And Buffalo got destroyed by Bryant last night. To my dismay, I took the points there as I gave out on the show with Buffalo, and they had no chance. It was a poor effort out of Buffalo. It was a good effort out of Bryant, but now it has to make you wonder, man, Notre Dame let Buffalo hang around in that game for a long time. Only won the game by 7. Noah Batchelor didn't play for Buffalo, who's one of their better players. So, maybe I'll be interested to see where that line opens up tomorrow, Notre Dame, Georgetown, because I think it could be close to a pick. And if it's not, if they're still giving Notre Dame more love than they should, maybe Georgetown is worth a look tomorrow. But going back to the Virginia game, I mean, both who wants a part either of those teams? I'll throw it to Steve. I don't really want much of a part of Virginia or Villanova at this point. So I will probably take a nap during that one, Joe.
I don't like Kyle Neptune. I didn't like the hire to begin with. I like it even less now, Merrill. But I mean, Virginia, that's your neck of the woods here. I mean, their coach, their Hall of Fame coach, steps down a couple weeks before the season starts? That can't be good with what's going on there. It's 129.5 the total. Is there any way we're looking at an over in this spot?
Yeah, 129.5 was the opener. It's now 127.5. So the early money has definitely agreed that the under is the way to go. Most books open in that 129 range. Some of the early offshore books, 131, 132. Now it's 127. So, yeah, we've seen some money coming in the under, and we've often talked about the big totals in the NBA, right? But it works the same with low totals in college and pro basketball as well. They're low for a reason, and Virginia has often played games in the 90s, right? Total, not just one team, total. And Villanova can play slow as well. Tony Bennett stepping down a few weeks ago shocked me. I didn't see it coming. Although it doesn't surprise you in hindsight, he definitely had talked about this new culture of college basketball, college sports. He doesn't like it. I've also said for years now it's very difficult to recruit NBA blue chip caliber players when you tell them you're going to average 8 points a game. So I think that style of play is very difficult as well to get guys there. And the only thing that was strange to me is that he stepped down really 2 weeks before the season. I was texting some people I know and whatnot. So first thought for all of us was either controversy or health issue, and we were hoping it was neither. And it really turned out it wasn't. I think one of the reasons he waited is so that his guy, he can get one of his guys in without them having time to go out there and shop and find somebody. But it could be a very short leash, and that we could see a new administration next year and whole new staff. And I really think in modern college basketball, you can't play this slow down Princeton style anymore and get the NBA first round caliber guys that the ACC schools need.
Yeah, it's under for me. I mean, it's Dixon or bust for Villanova. That's how they're playing right now. That's I thought Columbia. I liked Columbia over them. Trig. I thought Columbia is going to be one of those teams in the Ivy that we can probably make some money on here. And Villanova, it's just if Dixon doesn't carry them, that's it. And I don't think he's going to be able to get off here against Virginia tonight. And I still like the under. And by the way, this is Ed Cooley's second year at Georgetown? This will be year 2, right? And apparently he's got 9 freshmen on this team. So he
Yeah.
is legit rebuilding this program, is he not?
Yeah, and it's worth noting, like, Ed Cooley will build a winning team at some point. I mean, he's done it every stop. I go back to my days at Siena when he was at Fairfield. They were always good. Like, they were, I believe that was Siena beat them in overtime in the final in like 2010. It was probably his best chance to get to the NCAA tournament with Fairfield. Like, the only reason Ed Cooley never got to the NCAA tournament with Fairfield during his time there was because that Siena team was like Fran McCaffrey. It was like a dynasty, mini dynasty for those years. He won at Providence. He'll win at Georgetown eventually. No doubt in my mind.
I agree. Coaching matters in college, and it's not like you can just transfer into Georgetown because you still have to qualify to get in there. Merrill, let me ask you a couple of questions coming in. I saw one of the games from Grinded at All Times. Wants to talk Marquette and Maryland. I'm also getting some Florida State. Florida with Golden being under scrutiny right now, cannot be good for that program at all. But what are we thinking? A lot of hype around this Maryland team this year coming in, and Marquette. Can they repeat what the hell they did last year? I mean, Smart is one of those guys, especially as an underdog, we usually want to bet, right? But I don't know. We buying Maryland this year?
Yeah, Marquette's a team that was tricky for me last year. I kept feeling like they were overachieving, but they kept covering at times and winning. Marquette plays fast. Maryland was one of the slowest teams in the country. They ended up finishing 302 last year in tempo. And if you look at the early tempo ratings this year, it's fast versus slow again. We've actually seen a little bit of money coming on the over here, which I would kind of disagree with because, once again, I think home teams normally dictate tempo. And Maryland, we have seen some money coming on Maryland as well, 1.5 up to 2.5. So I would lean towards the slower half-court team at home with Maryland. If I think they can dictate their tempo, they probably get the preferred playing style. And I rate these two teams pretty equal overall, so I do think tempo is going to be the key here. So I agree with the Maryland move. I don't necessarily agree with the move to the over, though, because I think Maryland under, Marquette over somewhat correlated in this game.
We talked about that kid, Virginia Tech transfer. Is it Rodney Rice there, Trig, now on Maryland? Hey, listen, they got some guys. They should be able to score with anybody here. But what are we thinking here? Shaka Smart, one of the more reliable coaches in college basketball as a dog. But what do we think we're going to get here tonight? Is this an over game?
You're right about Shaka as a dog. The problem is I prefer him as a bigger underdog. Like, you're kind of talking, like you're talking a couple of points here. I think I make Maryland the favorite. I have Maryland -4 for this. So that's what I make the number. So I lean toward them. I think Maryland is definitely kind of going in the right direction relative to what they, were last year. So, but again, not a strong take for me. And I'll make this point. Like, these types of matchups are what I typically avoid in right now. And I talked about this on a different network this morning. I did a spot. And the point I made is this: Maryland and Marquette, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Alabama, Purdue. They have the luxury of playing with rotations, trying stuff out. If they drop one of these games, it's not the end of the world. And it's because of what the NCAA did years ago, sort of making it like November and December is really a time for these power conference teams to experiment. They don't hold these losses against teams like that in March. The same can be said for some of the very low majors, like the teams that come from the conferences that they know they have to win their conference to get into the NCAA tournament. There's very little chance of getting an automatic bid. The teams that I think really need to take November and December serious, like from a results standpoint, and I'd love to get Steve's take on this, are like teams from like the A10, the Mountain West, the American, where it's like maybe they're going to get 2 teams, but maybe you'll get a third. Maybe like the Mountain West will get 3, but they might get a 4th if a team like Boise wins a big game in November or December. Those are the teams that I really think these games truly matter for. So it really makes it difficult to handicap a Marquette-Maryland game in November when it's just that the stakes just aren't as high for teams like that. It's not going to cost either of them if they lose that game, and that's why it makes it very challenging to handicap.
Interesting. Yeah, well, it's fine too. We're also getting a question, and this has happened in two different chat rooms. I don't know what everyone's fascination with VMI and Tennessee Tech is, Trig, but I'm sure you can figure that one out for us because there's a lot of questions on that one. I'm also seeing Michigan TCU, and I'm sorry, but TCU getting 7 or 8 points feels like a ton of points. First true road game here. I'm still not buying Michigan this year here, Merrill, but I know that's a pretty well-coached team with Jamie Dixon at TCU, and it just feels like you want to give them that many points. I'll go ahead and take those points with TCU, no?
Well, I've got the answer to the first question, by the way. The VMI game starts here in about 45 minutes. It's the 3:30 Eastern
there
game.
You go.
And it's also the top of the schedule. So there's a lot of live viewers here on WagerTalk TV wanted to get in on that daytime, Friday afternoon daytime drinking action. And boy, you need some if you're going to the Greenbrier Colonial Hall to watch VMI play Tennessee Tech. A little bit of money on VMI, by the way, and a little bit of money on the under from what we've seen in that game. No, I want to go back to Michigan, all these teams. Like Adam brings up a great point, and it also kind of parlays to why I don't hardly ever touch these neutral site tournaments we're going to start seeing the next couple weeks in November. Bahamas, Hawaii, Vegas. You just don't get true results, especially when teams are playing 3 games in 3 days, neutral site, still working the rotation. And then you factor in on top of that more lineup changes in the history of college sports with the NIL and the transfer portal being wide open and guys not having to sit out a year. So a lot of uncertainty in these early games, but I go back to what I said earlier. I think you can find some misleading results, both good and bad, early on, especially for some of those tournaments we're going to have around Thanksgiving, and then use that to your advantage in December to find some play on and play against teams maybe 8 or 10 games into the year.
Well, Steve, wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree that like a team like this comes to memory? Last year, Utah State played their tails off in one of these early season MTEs. They won all 3 games, and it like hit me later on. It's like those are the types of teams that I would want to go to battle with in the MTEs because it's those couple conferences. Help me out. It's like the A10, the Mountain West, the American, and I don't know if there's even another one where it's like they're not mid-majors, but they're not the Power 5 or whatever you call the big football conferences. Those are the teams that I would be willing to back in the MTEs because I think the coaches in this league, the coaches of like the Ryan Odoms at VCU, the ones that have landed on the bubble in these last couple of years, we need to rack up wins at one of these things. We need to beat a power conference team or we're going to get left out in March. Like I would take that into that Thanksgiving feast week because there's going to be quite a few spots where it comes up.
I agree. And I think the Atlantic 10 is the ultimate example. It's a conference I follow close here on the East Coast, and that's a conference that has like VCU, some big name programs that make noise, but they really can't take it for granted anymore. So I think it is something to keep an eye on.
I'll say this. I see Slick Vic in the chat room. The one thing we know is that they got a couple of big 7-footers, Michigan, but Michigan through a couple of games already this year ranks in the 300th in defensive rebounding. I can tell you Jamie Dixon's teams at TCU are going to be crashing the boards every chance they get. And if they're going to out-rebound a couple of 7-footers, which I think they will, and have second chance points, there's no way I'm laying that points with Michigan in this one here tonight. All right, Trig, you talked about the American Athletic. You've talked about the A10. How about a best bet here? Something tells me you've got a game somewhere in one of those conferences that you like here tonight.
Yeah, I'll give you one of my clients. I got to try to make up for Buffalo yesterday, which was a complete bloodbath. So I do have a 5%er, my second 5% play of the season. First one won easily on Tuesday night. So that's up on my page. But I'm going to have my biggest card yet for college hoop. There's a ton of good games and good opportunities tonight. And so I'll give you one that I did bet. I took Ohio, the Brian Power Ohio Bobcats plus 14. Took it like late last night. I think it might be down to 13, but I still think it's very playable there against Memphis. And so my breakdown is this. First, there's a couple of roster notes I want to make. So Tyreek Smith is no longer with the program. He left the Memphis program, I think, right before their first game. But the way I kind of made the line here, I kind of based it on, I think the odds makers based it on maybe Smith still being at Memphis and Sharif Mitchell playing for Ohio. So I think right there, like I make it like 12.5, 13. So I saw a little bit of value at 14. Now we know Smith is gone because he left the program. Sharif Mitchell did not play in the most recent game against Illinois State. My gut tells me he plays tonight. Again, if he's out, no big deal. I still think Ohio has enough firepower. If he's in, and it's known that he's in, I could see this moving to 12 or 11.5. From a handicapping standpoint, I'm willing to go against Penny Hardaway as a double-digit favorite early in the season. Last 32 times, Penny Hardaway and Memphis have been a double-digit favorite early in the season. They're 10-22 against the spread. Hardaway is a phenomenal accumulator of talent. Great recruiter. I'm sure the kids love him. I think he's now been at Memphis since 2018. And he's gotten a ton of good players to come through there. I don't think he's a great in-game coach, and I think that's probably why he struggled as a double-digit favorite, which I expect him to tonight. I think Ohio's winning the MAC this year. There's less name recognition with Ohio than there was like 5 to 10 years ago. And the reason that's the wrong Ohio logo. Sorry, Dan. Dan's going to get mad because I pointed out Delaware earlier.
Yep.
Got to throw the Bobcat up there. Yep. I think the reason Ohio doesn't get the name recognition is because they've been a notch below the last few years. There's been such good Akron teams with Enrique Freeman, Ray J. Dennis at Toledo, those great Kent State teams of a couple of years ago, that Ohio's actually been pretty good, but they've kind of flown under the radar, finishing like third or fourth in that conference. They're the best team in that league this year. They went out and got a guy from Iowa State. I'll butcher Jackson Pavletsky, I believe his name is. It looks like he's going to fit in great so far. He's kind of been one of the keys for Ohio in the first couple games, and that makes me a little bit more comfortable to play this even if Mitchell is out. Obviously, Clayton's still there from last year. There's a ton of talent on this team, and they haven't covered yet. Ohio 0-3 against the spread, lost a tough game at James Madison. They failed to cover in a win in their second game, and then, of course, lost to Illinois State without Mitchell. I think you're going to see a really strong effort from Ohio. I wouldn't be surprised if they scared Memphis a little bit here. I'm not sure they get over the hump for the upset win, but you're going to give me 2 TDs with the Bobcats. I think that's good. So Ohio plus 14 is one of my 4%ers tonight.
Oh, love it. All right. Ohio plus the 14 here. And we even got the correct logo in there. So good stuff there. That's where you're going for. Trig, Merrill. Oh, boy. Got to be a William and Mary play somewhere in here. Kudos to you, though. I'm not sure if you went to that game last week, but you did say expecting some points, maybe an over. You believe the market was right in that game. What is the game that you're looking at or leaning at here tonight for us?
Yeah, we'll touch quickly. By the way, right after you talked about Michigan, if you check the WagerTalk live odds screen right now, you'll see Michigan just went from 7 down to 6 across the board, literally within a minute or so of you talking about that game. Adams' Memphis-Ohio game is lighting up right now. The total just went up a point or so. So it's pretty crazy how these lines are moving. Bama just got hit as well, I think. But the total that has moved more than any, and I'm not going to use this as the free play, but I will touch on that William and Mary Winthrop game at 5 Eastern tonight. That total overnight opened around 150 offshore. This morning, most other books opened at 153. It is now 159, 160. So, yeah, there is no surprise. The news is out about the fast style that Brian Hurl is playing. As Adam will tell you, when he was at Cornell, he did the same thing. Squeaked over against Norfolk State, easily went over against Radford last week. But, yeah, you're talking about a 10-point line move to the over in that Winthrop William and Mary game. So I think the secret is out that the Tribe is playing fast and wide open. They took 46 3-pointers, as I mentioned, on Tuesday night. But they live and die by the 3, right? So there's that random variance again. I'll look at a total we talked about earlier. And the more I've looked at this game, I do like the under in that Villanova-Virginia game. And this is another total that's moved quite a bit. Opened around 131, 132. Other books opened at 129.5 this morning. It's now 127.5. And that move is still not enough. This is a Virginia team, even without Tony Bennett there, that is still obviously playing extremely slow this season. You look at their games against Campbell and Compton State. They failed to cover both as big favorites because they were just so darn low scoring. We had 121 and 107 total points in those games. They both went under. Meanwhile, Villanova has gone over in all 4 games this year, and they've played some weak competition except for the St. Joe's game. And that was a high-scoring game the other night. But if you look at their overall tempo rating after 4 games, 364 Division I teams this year, they're still 312, and Virginia is 361. And they were very low tempo last year as well. Villanova last year finished 347, and Virginia finished 362 last year. I don't think anything has changed, and this total should be a lot lower. I like under 127.5 between Virginia and Villanova.
Yeah, Merrill, I tell you what do you think, even because this is in Villanova tonight? I believe. I'm pretty sure.
This game is at CF. No, this game's actually in Baltimore, Maryland, I believe. It's CFG Bank Arena. They play at 5 Eastern, and then the other game after that is Virginia Tech Penn State tonight at 7:30 Eastern. So it's a neutral site, but I think that helps as well, right, Joe? Because neither team is familiar with the shooting. So I think that's an added bonus.
And that's what I was thinking. Also, I saw the first half total at around 60. My goodness. I wouldn't be at all opposed. It's got 24-20 written all over it in the first half. It doesn't look like, especially at a neutral site game, doesn't look like we're going to get anything even remotely close there in that one. All right, couple other guys showing up here. Timothy, Big Daddy in the house. Appreciate that. The Sauce God is in here. Also, don't forget Slump Kruger. We appreciate you guys dropping by. Don't forget, and I'll ask you there, Trig. What do you got rolling at WagerTalk.com for tonight? I know you gave out a play here that you have to the clients with Ohio and Memphis. But what else you got locked and loaded, ready to roll for this weekend? Oh, muted.
I've got a huge card.
I never. Yeah, no, I do. I actually like 3 best bets and a 5% is a pretty big card for me, but it's just what college hoop is doing it's a little bit annoying, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but like they'll have these days where like everyone plays, and then like we'll have a couple days where there's like no games. It's like I wish they could get on the same page and be like, hey, let's put more games on Thursday, let's put more games on Monday. But it's kind of like last week we had 1 million games on Friday. So anyway, I do have a 5% play, which I love. My first 5% earlier in this week hit easily, and then I have 2 other 4% plays. I gave you one of those with Ohio plus 14. So go to my page and check that out. But real quick, Joe, I'm going to throw another play out. I'm not going to get the number I want, so it's not going to make my card. But I would be shocked if Cal Baptist doesn't absolutely unload on Long Island tonight and win that game by 20 plus. The books were ahead of this. I was hoping to get like 12 and a half. They opened this 16 and a half. But I have some info here. I don't think Brent Davis is going to play, who twisted his knee in the Air Force game and was in considerable pain, tried to come back in and twisted it again. I'll be shocked if he plays. And then Shadrick Lassow, I believe he got a concussion in that game against Air Force. So I don't know if he'll be cleared to play. That's 2 starters for Long Island. It's going to be tough for them to overcome that. On the other side of the ball, Cal Baptist is much better than I think they were last year. Of course, Dominique Daniels missed a lot of time last year. He's back, and they bring a kid over from a Wright State named A.J. Braun. I think Cal Baptist is much better. They lost a game earlier this week to Cal Riverside at the last second. I believe they lost the game by 1. I think they're going to be out for blood. And Long Island, of course, was in Colorado Springs for a day game on Veterans Day, had to stay out on the West Coast. They're still there. It's just a weird spot for them. And if they're down 2 starters, this could get ugly. So I didn't get the number I wanted. It's currently 16 and a half. Wouldn't be surprised if Cal Baptist wins by 20. And that's, of course, Steve, the Degenerate special, 10 p.m. I believe it's the last game on the board. So we had to give the people that one. But Cal Baptist by 1 million is what I
love it. Absolutely disgusting on so many levels there, and we are all for it. All right, so we gave you guys yesterday, we gave you Cal Poly as a getting 4.5 last night against Seattle, and wouldn't you know it, Cal Poly wins outright as the late night Degenerate special. Trig and I were talking about this game before the show started, and I think it's worth a shot with 2 very slow-paced tempo teams here, Trig. I'm going to take that under in the Army and Marist game. Two teams that, I mean, let's face it, they're not going to be in a rush to do just about anything in this game. 130, what did we say? 134, 133 and a half, I believe. Marist also shooting nearly 47% from three so far in the season in these couple of games. That's got to come back down to reality here at some point, and maybe a 1 or 2 bucket game at most. You've heard that Marist is actually pretty good this year, but this feels much closer to 120, 125 than it does 135 here, Trig.
Yeah, no, 2 points about that game. So one, Marist, they're better. It's probably the best team they've had in a few years. But you know what John Dunn, like his team's all about defense. He's been doing this for years. He was the St. Peter's coach before he was the Marist coach. He will grind you to an absolute halt. He plays one of the slowest paces, and he always recruits defense first. So that's why Marist's so good this year, because he recruits defense, and he just got lucky that some of them can actually shoot. Doesn't always have that. On the other side, Army, it makes complete sense for them to slow the game down and try to limit the number of possessions because they have Jalen Rucker back. So, of course, Jalen Rucker was one of the best players in the Patriot League 2 years ago, sat out last year because he tried to transfer and they wouldn't let him because you can't do that at a service academy. He's back this year. I think it makes complete sense for Army to just kill the pace, try to limit the number of possessions because Rucker is probably, they don't typically have a guy like Rucker who can do it on his own. So I don't disagree with you there, Joe. It feels like I think Army played Albany to a 67-59 type final in the opener.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar. That's the mid 60s is kind of where is the ceiling there, I think. 60 possessions, 63, somewhere in that ballpark is what we feel like we're going to get in this one. I'll take my chances, and I believe it's in Marist. Where is Marist? Is that that is in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Oh, there
Poughkeepsie,
you go.
New York.
All
it's
right.
about an hour and a half south of Albany. When I was at Siena, Marist had a kid named by the name of Jared Jordan who ended up playing for the Knicks. They were really good, and we had some great 2006 to 2008, those Siena Marist games were must-see TV.
We might have must-see TV with between Siena this year and William and Mary. We might have a lot of watching of basketball this year as both teams are off to pretty good starts here. And Merrill, just for the record, for you, tell everyone what you got locked and loaded. You are backing them against Winthrop tonight, or are we going just another over? Why not just go over? The pace is ridiculous with your team this year.
Yeah, I'm contractually not allowed to pick William and Mary games anymore. I've got too many conflicts of interest. No, I will point this out. The sharp money was all over them last Friday. They were a road favorite at Radford. They actually had a 5-point lead late, and they got outscored by 17, just went cold, which is what's going to happen once again when you live and die by the 3. But the sharp money pushed that Norfolk State line from -1 up to -3. I didn't agree with that. I said, I need to see something first. But they looked really good Tuesday night. And they moved the ball well. Their full court pressure defense. This is a tough spot tonight, though. This is 3 straight games, by the way. This is one of those little 4-team tournaments, and Winthrop is the host school in Rock Hill, South Carolina. They've got North Carolina Central playing Georgia Southern in the other game, and then they play each of those teams Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to find out a lot more about this young team. They have 6 or 7 straight road games now until December. So, no, I'll be on the sidelines on this one. I would definitely not disagree with the over, but once again, it's moved 10 points. And it's interesting, Joe, you're talking about that Army-Marist line. If you check the WagerTalk Live on screen, you'll see 133.5 open. That's where it stands now. But if you check those 2 offshores that opened before everybody else last night, it was 138. So this just shows you. This line's moved 10. That line's moved down 5. The Virginia line moved down about 5. This is why odds makers are pulling their hair out and why limits are so low in November, especially with overnight lines in college basketball, especially with totals. And by the way, Marist and Army, 2 of the slowest teams in the country last year. They're still in the mid to low 300 tempos this year. That line makes no sense at 133.5. And if you look, I love the point that you faced also about Marist shooting 46% from 3. Well, you forgot to mention they've given up 39% from 3. So they're due to regress on both ends down there.
Army's not going to hit that many threes. I'll tell you that. Army's not going to come and
chuck up that many threes
from 3. No.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say.
Steve, to your point on William and Mary, that I can't remember if you made it on air or off air when we were kind of talking about them. Kind of like waiting to see how this group responds to Earl, because obviously the only one that's played for him before is Keller Boothby, who came from Cornell. There was players were on record I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, when Cornell got off to this fantastic start. Joe, I want to say it was the year that they went down to Miami and played that awesome
And dropped
game
100
with Miami.
Yep.
And they even came back the next year and were like, we were gassed by like February. And if you go back to that year with Cornell, they had a terrible February. And so Steve just made a really good point that I forgot, is like they're going to be in a couple days type scenario coming up here.
Yeah, good point.
Right, Steve? Is that?
They play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They get North Carolina Central tomorrow is the weakest team, and then Georgia Southern is Sunday. They'll probably be an underdog to them. So it's an excellent point.
Well, you're going to be hyped up. We saw this
on Tuesday night, Adam. They actually gave up a 20-point lead with about 4 minutes to go, and it got it down to 11.
Yep.
I think part of the problem was they were trying to slow down to hold the lead. They don't play slow, but yeah, he played 11 guys on Tuesday night, and 10 of them played double-digit minutes. And one of the Dorsey starters was out.
That's another thing, right? So Dorsey and Boothby are the only two that have averaged more than 20 minutes a game so far. So he's just sending in waves. He wants to press all game. He wants to get up and down, take quick shots, and I'll be interested to see what their situation is on Sunday, because they're going to be hyped for this game tonight. This is the host. Winthrop's probably the best team that they're going to face this weekend. I think they're an underdog, maybe 7.5 points. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if they have anything in the tank come Sunday. 3 games in 3 days for sure.
Well, especially when you're pressing full court, you're taking 46 threes a game like they took Tuesday. Tired legs are not going to help those 3-point shots. So it's an excellent thing to keep an eye on.
I don't know what else and I'll just mention this. I know the 504 Doc wants to know if we brought up anything about Sacred Heart and Holy Cross. Not yet.
I got to take there.
This. All right, wait, hold on. Before that, I don't know what's going on, because there are some, you guys at a great point with the back-to-backs right now. We got another one with Robert Marist and Lindenwood in Lindenwood. I don't know why Lindenwood is getting the credit. This was 4.5, maybe 5 for Robert Marist. I'm looking at just the Ken Palm's rankings. Robert Morris has got to be about 60 spots higher than Lindenwood, and it's not a double-digit line here, Trig. Both playing a back-to-back here in a round-robin tournament, it looks like, at Robert Morris. Call me crazy, but does Robert Morris feel like the right side here?
Yeah, that is shocking that it's that low. I mean, Robert Morris is the host of this tournament. Now, I remember this tournament from last year and caught some of it yesterday. They had literally no one in the stands. I don't know what, that no one goes to this. So it's like, I'm not going to give them much of a home court, but they probably should be like an 8-point favorite.
That's what I'm saying.
Lindenwood's not good. And they lost yesterday.
They did beat the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy, so that's a good win. I'm not sure whether or not is that really that's going to count. That's apparently because they beat them. That's the only win they got.
Is that really what it says?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
So I'll answer the guy. So the Holy Cross Sacred Heart game, the reason I said I have a take there is that is also one of these 3-game and 3-day events. It's down at Brown. So it's in Providence, Rhode Island. Brown is hosting. My take is more with Brown. So Brown lost Nana Owasu Anane. I'm going to just destroy certain names this year. I apologize. But he was Brown's kind of key big from the team last year. The other one, Kalu Anya, is now at St. Louis. So that is just a absolute crushing blow for Brown to not have him this year. And their front line is really thin. Now, the reason I bring that up is Brown is another team that's about to play 3 games in 3 days. They're going to I think they might play New Hampshire tonight, and then they're either going to get Sacred Heart, I think they go New Hampshire, and then either Sacred Heart, Holy Cross, in some order. Keno Lilly is one of the best players in the Ivy League. He is a stud. He's going to be able to mask a lot of Brown's maybe issues of not having much of a front court, because he's that good. He'll cook most anyone on any of these teams that's on him, he's probably going to be better than. But this is where it comes like now you're going to ask him to play 3 games in 3 days, and what Brown is now asking from him without their front court is a lot. So I would be interested to see if Brown has anything left in the tank come Sunday or even Saturday when they're playing the likes of Sacred Heart or Holy Cross. So as far as the Sacred Heart Holy Cross game, I make Sacred Heart a slight favorite there. I don't know what, Joe, do you have the current number on that one?
2.
I think
I'm
Sacred Heart
2.
Who do they make
2.
favorite?
Sacred Heart is -2.
Yeah, I would say that's about right. Sacred Heart comes to the MAC from the NEC. I really liked them in the NEC last year. I thought they were they underachieved a little bit, but so I'm higher on Sacred Heart than I am on Holy Cross. So just slight lean towards Sacred Heart there, but I would be absolutely look to take either of these teams later in the week if you see a game where Lily just puts up 30 and plays 40 minutes and is just like out there trying to do everything. Brown will be a good fade later in the week.
All right. See, there we go. That's the kind of information you get here on the college basketball tip-off show here each and every week, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, a like button, come back and join us as college basketball. It is here. Now, the good news is we also have the NBA tip-off show coming up here in just about 20 minutes as we'll be breaking down a 12-game slate with the one and only R1L Steve Merrill and the prop god Andy Lang. That is coming up, guys, here in about 15 minutes. So make sure you hang around for that. Big Daddy sending a shout-out to Trig. Thanks for the information. We appreciate you guys stopping by. And, of course, don't forget, last call tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time, each and every Saturday, because we will be transitioning into college basketball as college football winds down.
Oh, yeah.
So make sure you guys
I'll be back
hit
on
that subscribe.
I think I'm on that. You're
on
tomorrow,
there, right?
talking about college basketball. So if you have any questions on those multi-tournament games that we just talked about, I'll have an updated take for you tomorrow.
Yes. Love it. Great stuff. As always, guys, we appreciate the time. Don't forget, hit that like, subscribe button. Come back and join us for the NBA tip-off show. We'll see you again soon here on the college basketball tip-off show on WagerTalk TV. Good luck tonight.